Okay, so make your way back over to the Meet. And we'll get started with our synchronous time officially. So as you're coming over, if you want to go over into the chat, I'd love to get to know what schools you're at, the position you hold there. So you can just introduce yourself by typing your school and your position. And if you didn't see yet, my colleague Maggie added something to the chat. If you didn't register for this session, please make sure you do so after so we can make sure we get your attendance taken and that you get credit for this session. And then I will officially introduce myself. My name is Rachel Horstman. I'm one of the elementary teacher support specialists for the district. And I'm joined here by Andrea, if she can unmute.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Quintana. I am the ELA support specialist, and we're so glad to have you here with us today. Please use the chat with any questions, and we will make sure that you have everything you need to try flipped classroom in your own classroom.
And then I'm also joined here by Maggie, if she wants to unmute.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see some of you all again.
So Maggie has already done such a great job. She's supporting us in the chat today. So you got a brief experience of walking through a flipped classroom as a student. And as you could tell, and as I'm reflecting on this, these structures can't happen unless you already have some routines built with your students, right? I didn't make it explicit that you should click on the schedule first. Some of you figured it out. I had to guide some people there. So that would be a routine that you'd have to set up with your students. But we're going to talk now about what you could do during your synchronous time. So your students went through that slide deck. I shortened it up a little bit just for our purposes today. And I created that slide deck from a combination of different things. A lot of people have found the Bitmoji classrooms on the internet in different places. We've created some. There was the module content that our department created for you guys over the summer. And then there's the benchmark virtual slides. So I took all of those things and tried to combine them into this slide deck so you could see a little bit of how you can start to pick and choose the different resources that are out there. So when you bring your students together during synchronous time, we want the focus to be on the work that they've already done and diving deeper, getting them to share their work and have conversations about the processes in their asynchronous learning time. So I'm going to go through, click through some of these slides. I apologize, my computer is a little bit slow today. So even though I didn't have this as one of the must-do slides for you, this could be a great way to start your synchronous time with your students. Revisiting the essential question, there are sentence stems already there. You could have your students use those sentence stems to share out their responses by unmuting themselves or using the chat. Another routine you could build in to make accommodations for your students is allowing them to draw a picture of the essential question before they show up to the synchronous meet, or doing a recording of themselves so that students who maybe have some trouble typing or spelling, creating sentences, have some different accommodations. But again, those are routines you'd have to build in with your class and let them know that they have some choices for that. Then I had you guys go to slide 8, which was a must-do slide. And so this linked you, and I apologize, I know the first link I had in there was an error, so I fixed that. But this brought you to the classroom assignment where then students could have their own copy of this and directly type into this response. So similar to slide number 5 there, you could prompt your students to know that they have choices, and rather than typing in these boxes, they could handwrite it on a piece of paper ahead of time, draw a picture, use Flipgrid or Seesaw to do a video or audio recording of their thinking during that time, so that as you come together whole group, they already have that work done, and they can either, you know, hold up their work in their screen, or again, unmute themselves and do some discussion. The other idea I had around this, and this is one of those benchmark created slides from their virtual learning resources, you have the ability to see all of your students' work in one place. For those of you that have been using Google Classroom, you might have noticed that Google Classroom will automatically populate a folder for you in your drive of all your students' work. So as the teacher, I could navigate over to that folder and model finding themes across student work if I truly had them type into this document. I'm going to go over to the classroom really quickly so you can see what I mean. So during my synchronous time, I could navigate to the classroom and see the students who've turned in their work and open up their different responses to model finding commonalities or themes in their work and bringing those together in the slides so that they all feel like their voices are being heard, because it can be a little bit difficult to get everybody to have a turn unmuting in large groups. And then I had you also focus on slide number 11, because this brought you to another assignment in the classroom that was created through our department's module work over the summer. So same thing there. That could be an activity that your class does as a whole group, because that's the guided practice piece from the benchmark lesson. So you could model going through that together, or that could be your formative assessment. You know, you could wrap up your lesson and have students go out and complete that work on their own time after you've had your synchronous time. Then the final assignment in there, and you might have noticed I did not have that as a must-do slide, was slide number 14, was linked to that Google Classroom assignment of your asynchronous work. So again, this could be a formative assessment or just a self-reflection for your students, that when you wrap up your synchronous time, having them go back and reflect on their learning. They can move the check mark to let you know their level of understanding, and letting them know that that is not for a grade, it's just for you to check in with them, and to give some closure to the lesson, revisiting what the objective was for that day. So like I said, in your synchronous time, you want to focus on the work that they've already completed, trying to do less lecturing and allowing your students to bring in the work that they've already done. So we're going to continue thinking about what a flipped classroom is. And Maggie, if you can drop a link in the chat to the Jamboard. There are 2 of them, because I see we have quite a lot of people here. Jamboard can be a little finicky if we have more than 25 people in it. So if you're having trouble, try clicking on the second one. If you're in the Google Classroom, there's also links to the Jamboards there. So I just want to give you some time to reflect on what that experience was like and what takeaways you had from being in a flipped classroom as a student. So I've got some guiding questions here. Number 1, how would you define a flipped classroom? How does a teacher's role change in a flipped classroom, as opposed to, you know, traditional teaching or whatever you've been doing thus far this year? So you can think back to physical classroom space or what you've already been doing in on-learning. How does this differ? How can you hold students accountable, especially during that asynchronous time? And how can you support student-centered learning in a flipped classroom? So for those of you that have not used Jamboard, you click here on the side to get a sticky note. You can change the color up here. I would really appreciate it if you used the color scheme so I know what questions you're responding to as you type. But try to go to the next slide first before you start populating. I've got a little key there to help you remember the questions and the color scheme. So find a slide that doesn't have too many people on it and start sharing some ideas that you have from this experience. We're going to give about 7 minutes for this, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so I'm going to bring us back together and just briefly share a couple ideas that really stuck out to me. A lot of great ideas in here. One I saw here, this was one of the first ones that popped out to me, that building something like this can be really time consuming and it might not feel realistic. I want to share with you, I did not create a single thing in that Google Classroom. And I want to encourage you to find things that already exist. I found that Bitmoji Classroom on the internet, and then I incorporated the CNI modules that were created over the summer and the virtual Bitmoji. So all of the work on my end was adding or changing links to meet the needs of my students. So I know that it can feel really overwhelming. I just hope that we can help you find some resources so that doesn't feel so overwhelming, and that you can use things that are good quality for your students. Another one I saw, this one really stuck out to me, that students can be held accountable in a flipped classroom by turning in their assignments. So I had all of the must-do activities for you as an assignment so that students could turn those in ahead of time. And I love that this person wrote that they can turn them in a timely manner, but giving them the grace to complete them at any point throughout the day. That's so important for our students right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea. She's going to wrap things up for us today. And Andrea, I'll just go ahead and present the self-reflection for you.
Rachel, can I pause us there for just a second? We have a question in the chat about how could something like this look for the little ones in Seesaw?
So we are actually doing a session on that later today. If you're able to jump in, we're going to be covering how to do this same kind of thing, but specifically for K2 students using Seesaw in Google Classroom at 2 o'clock. But just a very quick answer, I would say a lot more visual representation and a lot more audio direction.
Thanks, Rachel. When you're considering a flipped classroom using Seesaw, most of these ideas can easily be added in the exact same way that you did them today. Like Rachel said, adding in voice directions, which is a great part of Seesaw, is going to be really helpful for you to be able to do that at K2. So now that we've learned a little bit about flipped classroom, we had an opportunity to kind of think through it as a student and see it as a student. Now we're going to do a little bit of reflecting on what does that mean for us? Where are we in our learning and understanding of a flipped classroom, and what's our next step? So Rachel's projecting it, and Maggie just shared it in the chat with you as well. These next slides, these are also in the Google Classroom. They're called the self-reflection slides. I believe it's step 3. And so now that we've had the opportunity to kind of dive in, see other people's ideas and think about it, where are you in your understanding and processing of a flipped classroom? And so we're going to ask you to choose one of the columns, either emerging, so that this is your first introduction to flipped classroom, and you might need a little bit more support and professional learning to help you kind of get this off the ground for yourself. We have some additional resources there for you. We have a survey link so that you can sign up and get some more PD with us, and we can either join you or join your grade level or school staff to learn more about this. Maybe you're more in the developing range where you've heard this a few times and you're ready to kind of start doing this on your own. So we have some resources there for you. And then also a link for a survey to get a little bit more support. Then we have, maybe you're proficient, maybe you've been practicing this and trying this on your own all this year, or maybe even last year or years past. So we're going to introduce with you some resources about some hyperdocs to kind of push up your flipped classroom a little bit further. And you want to help support this work at other schools, so there's a survey there for you to help do that. And maybe you're advanced. Maybe you are rocking the flipped classroom. This is something you've been doing forever and you're able to support teachers. We have a flipped classroom PLC of teachers who are working just at that in ways to support each other and moving it even further. So we want you to join that group and share some ideas with us around there. So we have 3 different surveys for you to take and to know that those are going to stay open and available for you. So if you don't have time right now, recognize that those are still there, but we would love some feedback and to help you kind of reflect and take some next steps as you continue with flipped classroom. The last thing I'm going to share, I know our time is almost up, is tomorrow, scheduled through this same flipped classroom, is a knows and needs to know slide deck that's going to come your way as an assignment. This knows and needs to know is a way to kind of allow you that time that you've had now maybe a day to process. And now what do you still need to know about Google Classroom and flipped classroom? What do you need us to continue to provide resources for you so that you feel a little bit more comfortable? Or what would the next steps be logically in our professional learning that we could provide for everyone now that you've had some opportunity to kind of digest and think about what this flipped classroom looks like and could be for your classroom? And so that will be coming your way tomorrow as an assignment for the Google Classroom. And it should just take a minute or two as you just put in a couple ideas. We don't need a whole lot. Just add those ideas to those slides and feel free to do it prior to tomorrow if you don't want, if you don't need that time to process. But those are our 2 pieces that are going to kind of help us reflect. What do we continue to still have questions about? What do we need to add to this presentation or to a follow-up presentation so that you really feel like you have what you need to try a flipped classroom in your space? And we would love any feedback there. I know we only have 1 minute left of our time today and our schedule is super tight. So we want to remind you all to take our surveys to help us improve for the entire summit. And thank you for carving out a piece of your day to learn with us and to be part of this TLF summit for us today. We know that you're working super hard and really, really appreciate all of your time and effort to be with us here today. Please feel free to reach out if there's ever any support we can give for you, and continue having a wonderful day of learning either with us or with your students. Rachel, any last thoughts?
I just want to echo you, Andrea. Thank you so much for carving out some time today. It has been a crazy start to the year, and I can't thank you all enough for taking time out of your day and being with your students to learn here with us. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Our emails are here if you have any further questions or want to join that flipped classroom PLC with us.
The next sessions are starting at 10:15 if that's where you're headed. So you have a little bit of time to take a break for yourself. And if this is your final session, thanks for being here and enjoy your students. Thanks, guys.